Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this privilege to be here. And I would just like to, dampen the spirit a bit. I started value research in 1990. The mutual fund industry was very limited. Private participation was not allowed. At that time, the scale was about 2.3 lakh, and it was approaching to be 3 lakh crore. 20 years down the line, at that point, Indira Vikas Patra used to double your money in five years. Little ahead of that, it was 4.5 years. So, if we understand the time value of money, there is nothing much to celebrate about mutual fund. But not to say that it's a failure. It's just that, if you look at the scale, and assuming that money was lying there, there was also another characteristic of that money, that it was largely retail. It was largely individual investors who had invested that discretionary savings. It should have been, 50 lakh crore, assuming that money was lying there and was getting you some kind of, steady return going by the scale through all the turbulence. And I'm not saying that, anybody is to be blamed or why it has happened. Variety of environmental factors drive that. We had a fixed income regime which was extremely remunerative for individuals. We had an extremely turbulent, maybe a lot of structural things that happened in our market, which was extremely hostile to investor sentiment, your practice, the kind of products that were designed, when Prem started Kothari Pioneer, he came up with something called, they will run an open-end fund and it will give the NAV on a daily basis. And you will get an account statement, you will not get that was a kind of revolution in 1993. Then we had another revolution, that an income fund can be had, where the NAV used to grow by a paisa in Birla Income Plus every day, and it was like a daily fixed deposit. So we have come a long way. When I look at the past and look at the present, I think we have built a great foundation. We have seen a set of regulatory changes which has made your life miserable, difficult over the past 2 years. There is not much, and we have seen a lot of heartburn. But the brighter side of this is two. One is your ability to withstand the whole change. More importantly, most of the regulatory changes, when we talk of the regulatory changes, we are primarily looking at something which did hurt your interest. But that apart, about 25 to 30 other changes were made in a span of about 1.5 years, which will make you so much sure about what you are doing. It drives to the very basic thing, that your interest, your customer's interest, because you can't really grow, you can't really go and face your customer if you are selling an embarrassing product which will blow up tomorrow. And that is something which a large number of regulatory changes have ensured. So you can go and do something, conduct business and do things with confidence, which I think is a great takeaway. Of course, the second one is a fairly negative thought, that all the non-serious guys are out of business, which used to make your life miserable. So that is not something to be very cheerful about, but nevertheless, that is what Darwin said about 100 years ago, that fittest survive. So that is the backdrop, not much to celebrate, but the outlook, to my mind, for the advisory business and for the mutual fund business looks extremely bright, and it could not have been brighter any time before. Couple of reasons for that. One is mutual funds, they have been through this whole learning curve over the past 20 years. And today we see a situation where things have come to a point where they conducting their business in a manner, investors' interest and your interest, they are converging. And I think this is a beautiful situation. This is a kind of premise which just can't fail. Never in the past it has been like that. 15 years back, when you used to sell a product, it wasn't the case. Products were configured in a hit and run framework, that you go, sell your product, end of the story. And then the customer should be, I was meeting one insurance agent and who was telling me a very unusual story, that we have shifted our complete focus from ULIPs to mutual funds because, we used to make money, but then we had to change the set of people who used to cover different territory, because a person who covers a particular territory, he can't go there after 3 months. So if that is the way to run a business, it's not worth doing it. Because my understanding is that a great business, howsoever small it be, is a business where your customers respect you and you do it for a lifetime. And when you do it for a lifetime, and always the cost of getting to buy, get to buy your existing customer is always much lower. You can't really be hunting for a new set of crop, to be, a set of pigs to be slaughtered in every new season and look for another set. That's not the way to conduct a business. The way to conduct a business is to get a customer, make him a happy customer, and derive your revenue from him for a lifetime. And when you see a clear business premise for that, things will change. I don't think you will really ever be as short-termist in your approach as in the past you would have had been. That is one. The other is, when I look at the demography, it creates a historic opportunity. The way people start today, the way people have discretionary savings from day one, I think it wasn't the case when I got started. It wasn't the case for people who got started 5 years later, 10 years later. Today things are different. It's a very different generation which is getting into the workforce. I really wonder who will do their hand holding when they get started with the iPhone, when they get their second salary, when they aspire to upgrade their second car in 4 years' time. I don't know who will do their hand holding in terms of when they retire, they will not have the things which they thought was granted. How do we learn from the mistakes that we see all over the world to make sure that and historically we have been savers. The kind of situation that we see today, people will have sizable earnings doing that basic hand holding. Third is, basic opportunity to educate. Globally, we have all kind of markets where people start earning. If we have a very unusual and a very funny situation, that a person gets started, his money, he gets his salary, a part of his money goes into Provident Fund, which is a 8.5% fixed income. He starts accumulating in fixed income for his longest term investment. And even educating a person of the difference and the long-term effect of compounding, the power of compounding, why equities do well over fixed income over a period of time, the risk of equity and why it is not a risk when it comes to 30-35 years, how to manage it, how to view it. These are basic opportunities which presents an opportunity which is ready to be capitalized today. And I don't think these things sound too basic and simple. But meeting your customers, you would have realized that you have thrived on capitalizing on some of this awareness and imparting it to your customer. I don't think at this point where we stand, where the whole world thinks and we still our politicians talk of 8%, and even if they lie, it could be 6%, which is something to be extremely cheerful about. We are still not indebted individually, of course as a country we are. We are horrible in many other dimensions, but I think there is every reason to be very, very hopeful and optimistic about on a relative basis. And that I think, next 20-30 years is going to presents a special opportunity. And a small part of your time should be dedicated to thinking about this and how to configure your work. And mutual funds can play a role. And the outlook for mutual fund, one can't be more optimistic. Of course, I'm completely biased here because I don't exist if they don't do well. But the point is that everything else is fairly narrow. I think that, insurance outlook is just as bright because so many people, such big liabilities, such big aspirations, they need to get covered. And it starts before investing, before you accumulate, and this demography is particularly conducive to that. You really can't help a lot of people, you can't really help them plan their finances till they are covered adequately or reasonably. Then comes investment. hand-holding, and I think, a lot of people are quite anxious that are you relevant? People learn and then they change their advisor for very petty reasons. I think, this is where you have to really, I can tell you from the standpoint of, from the experience of running value research, that the scale of anxiety and what needs to be addressed by you directly. Of course, I'm not in the profession of advising people and getting paid for it in a format which you, but it is fairly close in terms of we get paid for the magazine that we produce which carries advice. So from that standpoint, I think, I can tell you from the scale of questions that we get, which ranges between 300 to 500 questions a day, which is sometimes very basic, sometimes extremely sophisticated, and sometimes extremely enlightening. Those questions actually are eye-openers for us to think. Sometimes they translate into, answering those questions translate into cover stories. And when we look at those, I think you can't be eliminated. You will be needed. Your real changes in the life of a customer. When he starts, he needs you for a different reason, to initiate. When he accumulates, he needs confidence. I think this week you need to supply plenty of confidence. And when they prosper, they change life stage situations, they need perfect hand holding. Do you have the principles of an attitude and also independence, your empathy, your ability to put yourself in his shoes and think of the best solution irrespective of your interest? And I think that translates into getting a customer for a lifetime. And this profession can't be eliminated. Fund companies can, insurance companies can, advisor won't. You're the biggest connect, and things can change what you sell. Things do change. We have seen it in the past 20 years that what was the portfolio of my parents is not at all what they have now or what I have as part of where my savings are deployed. So in that sense, I would say that, if you have some of these basic principles and framework in place, you can face your customer with confidence and it will be a different world altogether. You will be able to live a life of dignity, and that is one of the biggest reward of this profession. You get paid, you get compensated, it does not require capital, and then a lot of people respect you because you guided them. Thank you very much.